This is Fam Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air with Annie Yang for the first time. Welcome to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. How are you doing tonight?
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today to share some actionable tips on personal branding from my book, The 5 Day Job Search.
Well, thank you again for being on the program tonight. We want to let people know if you can see on the top on the icon, we are a featured podcast on the Newsly platform. For our listeners, if they use that coupon code GHOST and get 1 month free premium subscription, that's an audio only platform. We'll be on there later tonight as a featured podcast on Newsly. So you'll be able to listen to that there if you want to. And then what want to let people know also is we have your website up that is not clickable yet, but AnnieYangFinancial.com will be fully clickable as a URL when we're published on all the major platforms. So maybe you want to tell people what would they find if they click on that URL?
Well, if you guys click on AnnieYangFinancial.com, you'll find out more information about what's in the 5 Day Job Search book. Along with that, on the homepage, there is a button that you can click on to buy a signed paperback copy of the book. So if you go on Amazon or Barnes& and Noble, it's not going to be a signed copy. So for a limited time only, if you buy it directly from AnnieYangFinancial.com, you will get a personally signed copy so that this feels a lot more personal and relatable. And maybe because you get a signed copy, you feel a lot more motivated to actually finish reading the book and apply the tips that I offer. And if you guys also stay until the end of
Well, I
this
think
live
that's
stream,
awesome to have.
yeah,
Sorry.
if you guys stay until the end of this live stream, then I'll also give you guys a coupon code to get a 10% off discount and free shipping within the United States.
What I was saying is I think it's awesome to get signed copies. I talk to a lot of authors and people who do like and musicians also like when they if you go to a show and you go to the merch table when you get a signed piece of work from an artist or a novelist or like somebody that you're talking to that has that paperback or the book. I think it just makes it more personal, like you said. I think people get a better connection, and they just feel rewarded that they have that. So I think that's awesome that you're offering that.
Yeah, I
And
agree. I've been to
we
concerts
wanted to
where
start with
they
your
sign.
yeah, it's fun. And I'm in that game myself, but uh, we maybe can give a little bit about your background before we go into the book, in terms of like your point of view and how you got the road that led you to the book. So maybe you can kind of give the audience a little background on that before we get into it a little deeper.
Sure. Do you wanna know about how I came about with the idea of the book or, like, the last 10 years of my life that led up to this book?
Well, however you want to answer that, if you think the 10 years is important to the what the book is about, or if depends on what how you want to approach it.
Okay, so, basically, in the last 10 years, from around the time when I graduated high school, I worked a whole string of minimum wage jobs, such as working as a cashier at a grocery store, to scanning basketball and baseball tickets and checking bags when people enter a stadium, working at Domino's Pizza, and I always just wondered, like, is this really where my career is going? Is this what I'm gonna do the rest of my life? And I was always very ambitious and I tried several different things, but I couldn't find a way to progress. And I had graduated with a degree in communications. And well, what are you going to do with this degree? It's very vague. The career paths could
Hmm.
be in publishing or in the media. And I couldn't find myself working there. I knew I always wanted to share my own message, which is why I wanted to study communications. Um, at the same time, I couldn't find a way to share my gifts and my talents with the world. And then when I moved from Texas, which is where I was working at Domino's Pizza, to Boston, I decided I want to start a new life for myself. I want to reinvent myself. Maybe this is where I'm going to make my mark. And at that point, I figured, okay, I don't have an accounting degree, but I'm going to apply for accounting jobs because I'm very good at money management in my own personal life. And despite the fact that all these job listings asked for an accounting degree, I didn't let that stop me from applying. Instead, what I did was I made a really nice looking LinkedIn profile and this resume that really stood out because I also put that I was the author of 1001 Ways to Save Money. So when people were looking at my resume, they were like, wow, this is amazing. You wrote a book at 22, and they completely forget about the fact that I don't have an accounting degree. It's completely overlooked. And they're looking at my LinkedIn profile. Wow,
Mhm.
everything is so great. We want to hire you. And so for basically 3 job searches in a row, when I was applying for accounting jobs, I got a job offer in less than a week. And in fact, in my current job that I still work now, I got that job offer in only 5 days from the first day I started applying for jobs. So, this book is basically all the things that I learned away along the way to share with you guys how to personally brand yourself and stand out in the job marketplace so that you can also land opportunities, maybe even attract opportunities without applying for anything.
Yeah, I think the one of the things we want to talk about with the audience is the idea of personal branding, and you can kind of see that I'm a big believer in that because you see my logo up there, but it's on my shirt too. But the
Yeah,
idea today is that a lot of creators, whether you're a life coach, a mentor, an entrepreneur, a therapist, you have individual brands. And I've been talking since
mhm,
2016 on the podcast to all kinds of people that basically have their own brand. And it's like how do you reach your target audience? How do you actually connect? And a lot of times it's the way that you present yourself. And I think what you're talking about with your LinkedIn is how you presented that. And you found a very good way to, connect with not necessarily having all the necessary accomplishments or qualifications, but you were able to present yourself and to present your personal brand that made you appealing and you got the jobs. And I think
that's
that
right.
that's in today's digital age, I think that's real important, right? In terms of how do you actually do that personal branding, um, especially for somebody who's like in a creative field? Maybe you can talk about that.
Yeah, I would like to share because actually I'm a musician myself. Well, I wouldn't say professional, but I started learning piano 2 years ago, and I do eventually want to turn this into a professional thing. I want to play piano professionally in the future when I'm good enough. And so I'm already starting to think about, well, how do I brand myself as a musician? And I have found that a lot of musicians, they focus a lot of their time and energy on honing in their craft and trying to make everything just perfect. But the fact is, there's a lot of not as talented musicians who have a career versus the ones that are always in their room practicing who don't have a career. And I think that difference is the personal branding. So, yes, I do want to share with you guys some tips, whether you're a musician or not, creative, artist, anything, on how you can connect with the person you're trying to reach through the internet and make it seem like, wow, like this is so amazing and different, fresh and unique so that people are attracted to you online.
That's an important thing, like one of the things I found with podcasting is like, the general rule in podcasting is most podcasts fail after like 12 episodes. And we're
Why is
actually
that?
at today
What on earth?
with the Family Electric Ghost podcast, we're at we're at 980. We're at 980. So what we learned is actually showing up and being present actually has a lot to do with, your success. And we've been able to be, on our platforms, like in the top 10 of the podcast hosts on the platforms we're on because we're consistent. And
Mhm.
and I think the consistency is part of it is showing up and then actually liking what you do. Because if you do something and you're really like phoning it in and you don't feel good about it, then other people, it's like the law of attraction. If people don't feel that you're honest and authentic, then they're not going to come to you. And this is where I think some musicians make the mistake of they're practicing all the time. And you see some other people, they like they get out in the world and they're not scared to show their material. And maybe it's not as good as the person who's practicing, but they didn't have the fear and they presented themselves. And if you'll notice, like with the TikToks and and all the reels and all the YouTube shorts, is the people who present themselves to the audiences and consistently do it. They're the ones who are getting picked up.
I have to agree with that because right now I'm actually not a student of New England Conservatory, but every Friday morning I take a free class there that's open to the public, but it's really a college class. So basically I'm getting a slice of the college education for free, which is great. And every time I go there, I take notes because it's a class about how to develop a career as a musician. And I figured, okay, maybe I can learn something here. Every week, they invite someone new to describe how they've built their music career successfully and all of the things that they've learned along the way. And I'm sitting in the front row seat, excitedly taking notes. I turn around and I see the students behind me, they're texting on their phone. And I think, gee, you guys are here paying $50,000 a year to be here, and you're not even paying attention. If you're texting on your phone, you might as well be at home. I mean, you're not getting educated. And this is one of the most important classes you'll need to take because it's very clear you guys already know how to play piano, but do you know how to monetize this after you graduate? How will you get opportunities? How are you going to put food on the
Yeah.
table while doing this? And in the last class of last semester, we had a discussion and the professor asked if we had any questions. And I was genuinely curious. I asked the class, why do none of you care about marketing? Why is it that we have people coming in talking about posting your music on social media and none of you guys seem to have any interest? And they said things like, well, my work isn't perfect yet. And I don't wanna post anything online unless it's
Yeah.
absolutely perfect. And I thought to myself, "You guys all play better than me. It's already perfect enough for my ears." But they
That
don't wanna
that's
post. So they're not even showing up
that's a
online,
critical
let alone
problem.
consistently.
And you'll notice like wh- what you'll find is like if you go to Berkeley or you go to conservatory, right? And when you
Mhm.
find like the musicians who are actually popular musicians tended to not go that route because one of the things you learn as like somebody who's actually a popular musician or a working musician is that the first thing you learn is that you break the rules in terms of
Mm.
composition. That the people who actually made it broke a lot of the rules. They didn't do everything perfect. A lot of what we talk about as producers are what are called happy accidents, which means when you're writing material, a lot of times the unexpected, imperfect pieces of music, things that are maybe third take, fourth take, not the 100th take, are the
Mhm.
usually the better pieces of music. But there's a tendency for your logic brain to kick in and try to make something overly perfect. And that's like the mistake of the person who's so into that perfection that they never actually actualize. They never become a David Bowie. They never become a Lady Gaga because they're not willing to try things that are not the norm. They're too stuck in the Chopin. They're too stuck in the Mozart. They're too stuck in the structure of what they think is perfect. And what you find is what the audience wants is something that's authentic. And something
Yes.
that's authentic doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. And that's why you can get people in hip hop and EDM and all these other forms, and they technically might not be at the level of some of these kids in the conservatories, but they actually are working and actually will make more money than most of them because they're willing to actualize. They're willing to put out something that's heartfelt rather than something that's perfect. It's kind of like your example is like, I don't know if I have all the qualifications, but I want to try. and see if I can do it. And the business will put out that profile what they want. My day job is I'm a software guy, but I don't even have a comp sci degree. My degree is sociology and political science.
Oh
I've
my
been working
gosh.
in computer software design for 25 years. 25 years. I don't have a master's in comp sci. I don't have a bachelor's in comp sci. My education is liberal arts. How did I make it? Because they need people who understand how to write in software, even though you would think you'd have to know code. That what I do is called a business system analyst. A lot of people think, well, you got to be a mathematician, you got to be a coder. I write research papers within
Mm,
software companies that figure out what we should do, like a research paper that any liberal arts major could do. But you probably wouldn't even know that job exists because you think you need a comp sci degree. So a
yeah,
lot of times you got to
that's
show up
surprising me.
and just say you want to do it. You want to be in tech, but you don't have all the aspects, but you could still be in tech. You could be an artist and be in tech. Be a graphic artist doing work with backgrounds and storyboards for a video game company. Not know anything about programming and still work for an Activision or an EA Sports or any of those. So there's a lot of things that people prevent themselves from getting to because they don't think they're perfect, they don't think they have the right qualifications, so they don't even try.
I have to agree on that. And I want to touch upon this idea of perfection because earlier you were just asking me about what's on my website. I'll be very honest, this is a 1 to 2 page website. It's not a huge fancy website. And actually prior to my book launch last month, the website was about accounting. It was basically selling my accounting services and we did a very very quick rebrand just to sell this book. And I have an employee who's helping me with the marketing and designing the website. And I gave her this project. I said, we need this website up and running for the book launch so that once it's out, people have a way to click buy now. I can direct people to the website. They can click buy now. It
Mhm.
can take them to Amazon. It can take them to buy my book. But I don't even need an about page. I don't even need a contact page. Literally, just a photo of the book, a photo of me, buy now, and then maybe at the bottom it will say my full contact information since I don't have a contact form on the website. And she was like, "Oh, this is so small. We need this to be a huge thing." And then I said, "No, no, 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 no. No, no. You're complicating this." But she kept pushing and I said, "Well, if you want to be in charge of this project, you can do whatever you want. Just make sure the website is up." And she wanted the services page, about page, reviews from the book page, contact page, podcast page. And I said, I mean, I love your idea, I love your vision. And then she's like, yeah, I'm going to try to get this finished in a month. And I said, okay, you can try. But I didn't want to like burst her bubble and say, you know, maybe we can do 1 page a month. That would be a better rate to go rather than all those
Mhm.
pages in a month because no one can design that kind of website in a month. It's a huge project, but her ideas were just
Yeah, then you won't get
so grand.
it.
She didn't realize. And then a week before the launch, she was like, I'm
Yeah,
burned
big.
out, Annie. I need more hours. And I said, no, 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 you don't need more hours. The problem is you're trying to think so big and you're trying to make it perfect. All I wanted, I'm
Too
telling you
big.
again, all I wanted was 1 page. If you can make this 1 page look amazing, that's good enough for me. We can do all these other pages one month at a time. So I think this attitude that like if I build a
Well
personal brand, it's got to be perfect from the beginning. That is what stops people from even doing it in the first place because they overcomplicate it and they make it bigger than it needs to be when it should just be really really simple. You can do it a little at a time so that it's
well,
doable.
what we do in software is an idea called agile. And so in agile, we have incremental releases. And so what it allows us to do with the old style, and if I'm dating myself, I'm from the
Mm,
80s and 70s is waterfall. So waterfall, you have to have the whole thing done. It's a management style where you end up with like 150-page document and all kinds of other documents, and they have to be perfect. And the
mm.
problem is that's not the way the world is. So software has evolved to do agile, which means you can do incremental releases. And what you'll see when you use your phone and you have an
Mhm.
app, like every night you get like, oh, there's an update 1.1, 1.21, 1.31, 1.34. What is that? Why is that happening? That is happening because we can now get something out there.
Mhm.
It's not perfect. And the things that we didn't finish, we will release later. And we're never done. We keep on incrementally releasing when we're ready, but we can put something out day one. So day one, you have that first page, or you have
Yeah.
these capabilities. Day two, you get these other capabilities. But we used to have to wait like for a year to put the whole thing out there. And now we don't have to do that. So I think people need to think in an agile way. Like you're saying, it's like I just need the first page. I just need that be able to people to buy the book. Some people don't ever finish if they want to put all 10 things in. It's a big idea, but then it never gets done. That's the problem.
'Cause the thing is you can always look for your brain can create this endless list of things to improve on. Like, unless you put a hard limit on, like, this is good enough, it's never going to be good enough. You're always going to find something or some reason for why it's not ready to go out yet. And I think this applies, so something I talk about in my book is the importance of not just putting yourself there out there online, but putting out some content as well so that you are seen as an expert, because if you don't put out content, people will not in this day and age see you as an expert in whatever you're doing. So that could be doing the podcast or YouTube channel or blogging, writing a book, whatever it is, some form of content that people can consume before they decide to hire you for a job, a project, any opportunity. People want to check out your work first before they reach out. And this, I apply this mindset and philosophy to my own YouTube channel. When I first started, it was really low quality. I think the content was my main concern. Like, is what I'm saying making sense? Is it engaging? Are people
Mhm.
walking away with something valuable? But the production quality was very bad. I was filming in front of my bedroom with an iPhone, and the microphone was a lav mic, a cheap $20 mic that I got from Amazon, and I had no idea how to use the mic because it was this close. I didn't realize I came from a public speaking background, so I learned to project my voice. So I used my public speaking voice
Yeah,
in front of the camera for the video, and of course the mic just like it went
wasn't picking it
crazy.
up. Yeah.
It picked up way too much, and I always hit the gain
Well,
level. Yeah,
too
yeah,
much
yeah. It
feedback.
was very bad audio, and
Yeah,
people this was a video which because the quality was so bad, I never wanted people to watch it. I hoped in my heart that I would make 100 videos where I slowly improve over time, and then people would watch my later videos, and that's when I would be successful. But actually, this first video I made went viral and got over 1,000,000 views out of nowhere, and I was getting
that's the
comments
way
it was like a one-hit
mhm.
wonder. I
That's
was
what
getting
happens sometimes.
yeah, I was getting comments like, "Why are you yelling at me? Your microphone is right there." And I just wanted to say, "It's my first time making a video. I don't know how to do that." You know? But, after the
But you
first
did it. I
one,
mean, that's the
I
point. Yeah.
yeah, I did it, and after the first one, what I did was I kept looking for ways to be better. So after that, I would look for 2 to 3 things with every subsequent video to improve. So one time I upgraded my microphone. Another time I went from using an iPhone to using a camcorder. Then after buying the camcorder and using it, I learned how to adjust the settings for a next video. Then I learned how to compose the shot, like
Mm,
how high above my head should the top of the video frame be? Like how do I look good in front of the camera? Next one after that, how do I improve my makeup? Because my makeup, I was wearing this glossy lip gloss, and someone said, "Your lip gloss be popping," and I was so embarrassed, right? So I learned I have to use a matte lipstick on camera, but I didn't know that. The video after that, I learned
mm.
how to improve the way I dress. So, I think 2% better with each video. And then today, the quality of the video is good, the content is good. So that's how I got here today. I wasn't always like this. It was bad in the beginning, you
Yeah,
know?
it's kinda like when I podcasted, like, back in 2016, it was on an app called Spearmint. It was just an
Uh-huh.
audio app using a microphone on a iPhone, and
Mhm.
you would go and, connect with another person, and you do it totally audio on the phone, and it had whatever quality that was, whatever iPhone was back in 2016, that's what it was. And then over time, I started to use my musician tools, like high quality microphones like this, better web cameras, better capabilities, like capability we're on now. I'm running through an audio mixer. So this show is running through a professional mixer like I used to make music.
Mhm.
So as I started to realize, oh, I can take my mixer for making my music and use it for the podcast, and then use one of my microphones I use for recording vocals and use that for the podcast. So I started incrementally adding things over time, got better web cameras that can do 1080p and 4K and stuff like that. So you just over time, as you get more money and more capability and more understanding and learn how to use a mixer, I already knew how to do that. But as you do things, you just progressively, incrementally add them. It's kind of like the whole idea of agile. If you're agile, which means you start to think on your feet, you allow the happy accidents. But I knew a lot of people like they're going to start a podcast for like the last 5 years. They said they were going to do it, they never did it because they wanted the first one to be perfect. I'm at 980. I didn't care about being perfect. I just started doing it, and over time, you get so comfortable doing it that is what becomes your asset. That you've done this many episodes, so now you're totally not fearing anything. That you're willing to take on all kinds of topics, talk to all kinds of people. That becomes your asset, your capability. Is that your experience? And I think the people who never actualize or never present, they don't get that experience with the crowd. They don't get that experience with the audience. They don't get that experience with the job. They don't try the job that they don't know if they could do. And so that I think I think perfection is the enemy of creativity and progression because you're never going to be perfect. You're going to fail. Failure is part of learning. And if you're always scared to fail, you're never going to learn anything.
I have to agree, and I actually coincidentally happened to be on this Zoom call with someone 4 hours ago. My friend introduced us, and I asked her what she did, and she told me she's a real estate agent, but she had always wanted to start a podcast. I asked her, "When did you come up with the thought of wanting to start a podcast?" And she told me 2017. That was 6 years ago, and I asked her, "Well, why haven't you started it?" And she said, "Oh, I've just never had the time." And I was like, "What? You never had the time for 6 years to start a podcast?" Anyway, we hear those kind of excuses all the time. Those are excuses. And she told me that she now wants to start this podcast. She's committed to doing it, and I said, "Okay, so why not start? When are you gonna come out with your first episode? I would love to listen." And she told me she has to do 10 episodes first. She wants to front load and do all 10 first and then release them. And I'm
Oh,
thinking like, why? I mean, well, maybe
just
she
pre-record. Pre
I'm not familiar with how to make a podcast successful. Maybe
Yeah,
some successful podcaster said you should start with seed it with 10 first so that it has a great launch or something like that. But I think that's too much pressure. It takes a lot of time and
yeah, I can
effort
tell
to
you.
do 10. She
Well,
should
I've
just
been
start,
yeah.
honestly.
Well, that's it. Well, there is a mindset and there is a certain mindset in podcasting, which I don't do. I'm a live podcaster, so I
Mhm.
don't have that issue. I do like 5 or 6 episodes a week, sometimes 7, and so I just show up. Some people, because they want things to be so perfect, or they don't know if they're gonna be consistent, they wanna front load it with, like, 10, 20 episodes so they have them in the can, so they don't have to worry about doing it every day. But to me, what I made a decision when I was gonna be I'm a musician and I'm a designer. I have a very long day just doing my day job. then I do my other job as a producer, and I work with bands and stuff. So how do I find time to do 6 episodes? Well, I just find the time. So time, that's kind of an excuse that I don't buy, but that's just me. But the idea that some people just can't start, so they're just constantly putting things off. They're always not ready to procrastinate. Procrastination is really another enemy, because once you start getting into the zone, or what you call the flow state or something, then you feel comfortable and you do it. But some people have that such a high, uh, it's a high, like, bar to even start. So if you tell yourself you got to have 20 episodes in the can before you can even start, you'll probably never start.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
think
if
she's ever
you
gonna
go and say,
start.
well, maybe I just have to have, yeah, if you only have to have one episode in the can, maybe you could start. But when, as soon as you say 10, then you're probably not going to start. And my point of view, when I deal with people like that, I had a guy who was say he was a real estate guy, say he was going to do a podcast like 3 years ago, still hasn't done it because he wanted like 5 in the can. He never did it. So I'm like, okay. I'm at 980. So it's like I got two more tomorrow. It's like I schedule myself, I make myself available. I just do it. Like, sometimes it's like that, it's that idea, you just do it. You kind of do have to just do it. I
Yeah,
think you
regardless of
have to
how you
be
feel.
consistent.
I
Yeah.
think that the thing is, like, people wait for inspiration or motivation to strike, and then it's like, "Well, when I feel good, then I'm going to do it, or I'm going to take action toward it." And the thing is, in order to show up consistently, even when you don't feel like doing it, you still have to do it. Like, I I have problems in my life like everyone else. I have drama, I have emergencies that happen, but my friend told me that what made me successful in from his outside perspective is that when people have problems, because we all have them, once they get emotionally downward, all hell breaks loose. Like, they stop taking action. They're not consistent. But the thing is, like, when I get
Mm,
emotional, when I'm angry, when I'm upset, when I explode, for the rest of that day, I still do my work. So even when it's like
mm.
this, I st- I might like lower my productivity a little bit, but it's like this, right? It's not like a flat line all the time, but it's somewhere in the average like this. And other people are more like
Yeah, you still
this.
do it. Yeah, you still,
So they just straight up don't do it. They don't show up
yeah,
consistently.
some people have a hard
And
time.
I want to say something that I came across from a very big successful podcaster who books a lot of interviews with famous people. He made an article complaining about why some people stay small, and he said the reason is they don't show up. He said surprisingly, it is much easier for him to book an interview with someone famous and very, very successful and always busy than it is for him to book an interview with some no-name person. And you would think the no-name person has a lot more time. But he said
Yeah,
the
they're hard.
reason he has found that the reason why it's so much easier to book a very famous, successful person is because they're willing to show up consistently. Like, once you reach out to
Yeah,
them, they're like,
that's,
"Sure, I'll get on your
when
show."
I
And not only that, they're highly responsive. They get back to people in 24 to 48 hours. They don't take a whole week to get back to someone.
what I've found when I've interviewed 2 Grammy award-winning producers on my podcast, and I didn't even know how I could get to them, but I did, and they were super responsive. Because what I
Mhm.
found with the A-level people, like the people that are very, well-known, I got movie producers, film people, actors. This because they show up. Like, because the reason that they're successful is they're very and even though they're super busy. I mean, the Grammy-winning producers I talk to, I have, like, tons of bands booked with them. They're working all the time, but they found the time to do an hour podcast with me. And like I said, I've had people who I don't, that are very, I've never heard of them before, and then they skip out on me. I have a scheduled podcast, and then they don't show up. But the Grammy award-winning
Wow.
person showed up 10 minutes before, was prepared, no problem. And so a lot of times what I find is yeah, it is interesting, but I think it's that type of drive. Like, if you're a very driven person, they tend to be working all the time. They're working like long hours, but it's not work for them because a lot of times it's fun. That's what people don't understand. If you're having fun, it doesn't seem like work. And so that's where people make the mistakes. Like if you really love what you do, it's not a problem, right? Usually it's like you're so involved in, you're so excited that you're just happy to be alive. And maybe you have down points, but you seem to be so invigorated by that just life. That's what I find is very inviting when I talk to people like that are very, engaged and they're showing up, they're present.
Yeah, well, I think those people are motivated by some spiritual aspect. Maybe they have a very strong purpose or why, and they just feel called to do something, right? Like I think people look at me and they think, "Oh, she's just so passionate." But no, actually, I honestly feel like I'm pushed. I'm not sure what your spiritual beliefs are, but I'm pushed by God to do what I'm doing, right? So all the things that I do, it doesn't make
Mhm.
sense. Like how does personal finance fit in with the accounting, fit in with the YouTube channel and the book? And it's like this
Yeah,
it's like all
expansion.
these random things that somehow come together, but I just feel like called to do it, and I feel like if I don't do it, I'm doing a disservice to people. So that's why I feel like I do have to show up. Like, if I don't show up, I feel like
Well, I think
people are missing out.
yeah. Well, I think what I find with a lot of people who are, creative or just engaged and, present is that, a lot of us like, I feel that I'm a kind of a I can channel things as an artist. That I show up because I can just channel, so I can just jump with a bunch of people in a band. I could just jump into a band right now with a group of guys, bass player, drummer, and just start playing without even knowing what we were gonna do. Because I just feel it, like, and the type of people I work with, they feel it too, and we don't even have to tell each other what we're gonna do. We just again nonverbal communication. Somebody start playing something, I can just jump in. I don't really have to think about it because I just am open. I'm open to what's out there in the universe. I'm a Buddhist. I'm very spiritual in terms of I feel like the law of attraction. Like so I feel if there's something out there, I can kind of I can just pick up on it and I can just go with it. And then I constantly come up with ideas. And I don't have to worry about it. So I don't stress about what my next thing's going to be because I just kind of trust in my own ability and I trust in the universe and I trust that there's going to be always something happening. And for me, it is there is. So I don't worry about it. But yeah, I think that's hard for some people because they don't have that mindset. So if you don't have that mindset, if you're always living in a deficit, you're always thinking about what you don't have, then you're gonna be kind of stressed out. And if you're stressed, what happens to in the law of attraction? If you're stressed, you're gonna be kind of prickly and nobody's gonna come to
I
you.
I think you have an abundance mindset, and it reminds me because you're just letting things come to you, right? It reminds me of an affirmation that someone said that works for her. It's, "I don't chase money or opportunity. Money and opportunity finds me." And what belongs to me is and always will be mine. So if it belongs to me already, it will come and find me. So I think that's the kind of mindset you already
Yeah.
have, and
Well,
that's
it's like
why
a law
you
of
have a
attraction.
successful career.
Yeah, I got multiple. I like to have multiple things going on. But it's like, well, when do you have downtime? But it's like, downtime to me, it means maybe my problems. Like, I don't like not having something on my calendar. I like to be engaged. And some it's hard. Like, I'll go off and walk in the woods to kind of
Mm.
get the stress. I'll go mountain bike. I'll go hike. That's how I find nature is a cathedral for me. There was a poet that said that, like Longfellow. But the idea is like I de-stress by going out in nature. I de-stress by going for a hike or mountain bike. I live in New Hampshire, so I can just go out in the pines and I can do that. And that to me revitalizes me and then I'm fine. But yeah, it's just I think that the value proposition for all creative people is that you have to show that as an individual you always have something to bring to the table. And I think is about self-worth. Like, if you don't believe that you're worth anything, if to somebody that you're not worth anything to yourself, how are you gonna have that value proposition to be successful. You yeah, the first step is kind of like all the analysts and all the people who do life coaching will always tell you you have to solve the self-worth problem before you can go anywhere and do anything very really at a high level is that you have to solve that. And if you're already in that mind space, then you're going to do pretty well.
This what you're saying about the self-worth actually reminds me of my friend. She recently got fired from her accounting job, and she had always wanted a creative career. And I said, maybe this is the time for you to pursue it. Maybe this is like a message that we've closed the door on the accounting because you don't like accounting, and you need to go after what your heart feels is right. And so now she's trying to become a freelance photographer. But then every time she takes a picture, she asks me, Annie, how does this look? And I always tell her, this looks amazing. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful photo. And I don't even think I would ever take as nice of a photo as you've taken here. And she's a quite a, beginner intermediate level, but sh I think her work is stellar. I think she can get a lot of money for her work, but she's so insecure. That's why she keeps coming back to me and asking me for my personal opinion of her work.
Mhm.
And here she is, she's trying to get clients. People are messaging her, "Well, how much for the photos? Can I get a quote?" And she's freaking out, and she doesn't believe her photos are worth any money. And she's saying, "Oh, I'm willing to do free work in the beginning to get exposure or something." And I'm like, "This is already good enough to get paid money." And
Yeah,
and
yeah,
she's
that's
wondering
always a
why
problem.
she's like wondering why no one wants to pay her. After she gives a price, no one answers. They just disappear. And I think it's the self-worth problem. She doesn't believe her photos are good enough to get paid.
Right. That's the problem because if you don't feel that your work has value, then you're scared to actually present it as something that somebody wants to buy, right? So I think a lot of artists run into that trap where they don't actually monetize their work because they feel like, well, I gotta go out there and give it away, or I gotta see how people interpret it. And a lot of people are, you're gonna say, well, how did this guy just go out there and do it? Because they didn't have that problem, right? They just went out there and they did it. They went on TikTok and they did something, and you're like, but that's inane. Yeah, but they got like 5 million views, and now they're getting deals, and you're like, well, that's inane. It's like, well, they were willing to do it, and you're not. So it's like, so you have to. It is kind of hard for people to push out their work because they take it personal. And I always had to tell people, like, if you're an artist, you're gonna have to stop walking on eggshells. Because if you're gonna present, you're gonna go on stage and you're gonna go in front of somebody, you have to be willing to take that crowd how they're gonna see you. And you learn from it. Every artist, like Prince went out with the Rolling Stones when he first went out, and they booed him. And
Mhm.
the Rolling Stones thought he was awesome. They put him out on the stage, and the whole Rolling Stone audience like said, "No, we don't like this guy." And that was before he kicked off with 1999. Now, if he had looked at that and said, "Well, I'm done. I went out with the Stones and the whole crowd booed me, so I can't be a superstar." But he didn't do that, did he? He went out and did 1999, and the next thing was Purple Rain. Look how big that got. He was willing to present, even though he got hurt. And he did say that was painful, but you have to be willing to take that if you're going to present. And that's even at a level. How's that mean? Well, even when you go to a job, if you don't get it, you don't get it. But you keep on feeling like I could get it. So why not present?
Mhm. I think the problem, this whole rejection or fear of the negative criticism that's stopping people from putting out their work or applying from a job, it's just it doesn't make to me, I used to go through it with the whole, "Oh my gosh, they rejected me," or "They said no. This must mean that I am not worthy. I am not capable." And it took me a long time to transition to be able to say, "Actually, no, that's completely separate from me. They're not rejecting me. They're just rejecting what I'm offering. If I offered them cake, maybe they would say yes." It depends on what I'm offering. They're saying no to this offer. They're just not interested. Maybe they don't want pie, they want cake, right? So, this it's just
Mhm.
I think the thing is people are so scared to put themselves out there because of this negative criticism. Even me publishing the 5-day job search, I was wondering like what are people going to say? What are people going to think? And then the reviews started coming in. Everyone that I personally know or is an acquaintance who has read the book, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever read." And they're not saying that just because they know me. They genuinely really thought the book was helpful. But then I paid I would say I paid for 10 editorial reviews. So these are professional people who give objective book reviews. Their living is to read books and give you their professional opinion of your book. $400 each. I paid for 10. So I paid like 4,000 and a good chunk of them came back scathing. They hated my book.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Yeah, just absolutely scathing, and I was very much, like, taken aback. Now, what I expected was a professional, objective review, so I'll take negative criticism, but if you're gonna criticize me negatively, at least tell me what was wrong with the book. Like, what did you not like about the book?
Be
What could
constructive,
have
yeah, be
been
constructive.
improved with the book, right? But instead, one of them actually came back so bad, he attacked me as a person. Like, he attacked my character and
That's not
said,
what
not just the book is bad, but Annie Yang is totally unqualified as a person to even give advice on this topic. And I thought, wow,
oh, wow.
you know, but
That's
and I
like
was
some
2 to 3 days of that, I kinda like mulled
well,
over
yeah,
it and
yeah, I mean,
cried. But in the end, I just said, "You gotta take it or leave it." You know, you gotta like the whole package or not. People who don't like a part of the book, they don't like one chapter of the whole book. I mean, you kind of have to evaluate the whole thing as a whole package, right? And everyone's gonna have their own opinion.
yeah,
So I'm just
holistic,
like,
yeah.
whatever, whatever. Once it's out there in the world for other
I mean,
people
it's
to
like
see,
when
that's
you're
all it is.
when you're a creative, yeah, when you're a creative person, like, they're always gonna be the hater. There's some people they just hate, right? Especially if you do something that's uniquely you, right? Your take on it, and then they don't see because some people go by credentials. There's some people don't. It doesn't matter if that person is credentialed or they had been an expert in their field and they had done it before 10 times or 100 times. Then they're all going to be like, "Oh, there, yeah, that's fine." As soon as somebody comes out of somewhere with you, they don't know you, and then sometimes you step on people's toes because they're like, "Well, I don't know you. Why right do you have to say this because I don't know you. I don't see your credit, whatever." And I think that's a problem in terms of not being open. There's some people who are very narrow. And they tend to want a canon to stay in a very narrow range, and they're not
Mhm.
willing to look at other things. And as soon as you kind of push at that, you're gonna get feedback. So to me, as an artist, as a creative person, it's like, yeah, you're gonna get those people, but what you do is you keep on developing because everything you learn from every lesson learned. In software development, we have lessons learned about things that worked and didn't work, and we progress. And sometimes we might have somewhat like, well, that was a disaster, but from that disaster, we actually came up with something new that went and it killed the market. It's like, wow. So if we hadn't done the thing that didn't work, we wouldn't get to the thing that did work. And that's what people, that it's a progression, it's an evolution. And I think if you think in terms like that, it's got to be a holistic picture of the steps on the rung. As a songwriter, I write like 100 songs, maybe two do well. Does that mean I stop writing? Or do I take
No.
each step as something that gets me to the next one? I think that's how you have to look at things instead of saying, "Well, I'm not gonna do it at all because most of it's not working." That's what the problem with most people, they look at the 98 that didn't work and then they give up.
Yeah, they should be focusing on the 2% that does work. For example, when I was marketing this book, what I did was I reached out to 2,000 people one by one. I personally text messaged or messaged them online. Each individual person, I asked them, I'm launching this book. You're in my network on LinkedIn. I've never met you, but you're in my network. So I'm reaching out to you. Or, "Hey, I haven't spoken to you since high school, but I'm launching this book. Do you wanna help me support my launch? If you could write me a review on Amazon, I'll give you a free signed copy." And out of 2,000 people, 300 responded, "Yes, I would love to help you with your launch." But you don't see me crying about the 1,700 people that either said no or completely ghosted me.
It
I
is.
don't focus on those people. I focus on the 300 that actually said yes. And then out of the 300, I didn't, I'll be very honest, my expectations I think are realistic. I don't think all 300 even back then would actually follow through. They would say, "Yes, I'm interested," but that doesn't mean they're
Yeah.
actually going to do it even if I do give them a book. And out
Yeah.
of that, the Amazon reviews are right now at 79. So you can imagine 79 out of 300 actually did end up supporting me in the book launch, but I'm focused
That's
on
still
the
pretty
people
good.
who actually
That's pretty
helped.
good, though. That's a good number. That's
It is
actually a
a good
better
number.
number than you would think.
I know. But in
Yeah.
order to get to
Well, I
that
mean,
number,
that's a good number
to
because I
get to
mean,
the
a lot of times
79, I
I
had to
was
reach out to
talking to some business
2,000.
guy. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. But it's like sometimes, like, when you're in marketing, like, I've heard some people say, like, if I had 100, um, pitches and I get 2 people to become permanent or recurring customers, that's actually okay. If I get 2 people to come back out of 100 and they keep on buying and they're repeat customers, then that's actually not a bad number. So sometimes it's like, and some people would look at that, what's a bad number? It's like, but this other guy was looking at it. He was like a startup guy, and he said, well, that's not a bad number if I can take those 2 and keep on building, get referrals, and bring that to 4, bring that to 6. Then I start getting people repeat customers, and I have to keep on spending the money to get a new customer. And so there's some people who start looking at the glass half empty or half full and start thinking about how you can turn that into an opportunity. And I think that's where people who procrastinate look at the disastrous thing, look at the very pessimistically, and then they're like, "Oh, it's done. It's not working." And the people who keep on showing up, people who are present, that's like, for creative people, I think you have to really work at your brand. Like when you start, you maybe have a narrow focus. You start to widen it. You start to figure out your audience. You start to figure out what they want, what you want to do, how you want to show up. And it's a process. It takes a while to kind of figure out who your core audience is, who your core customers are, and are you actually, providing something that you would buy or you think anybody would want and or interested in. And once you start to tackle that and really honestly look at it, I think you can start to build a brand that will connect.
Yeah, I think what people don't take into account is, you see, it takes a while to figure out what works. What is the value proposition you're offering? Who are you trying to reach? It's something that will take a while, and with every no you get, you learn a lesson like, "Okay, well, maybe this didn't work. Let me try it a little differently next time. Maybe it's my approach. Maybe it's something I said." In every aspect of running a creative business, it's like that. Um, the thing is, like any creative endeavor you're trying to do, I personally believe there is a way to succeed, but the formula for success is always the same, showing up consistently, not being willing to just put in the work regardless of how you feel, right? Not being scared to put yourself out there. But the thing is, the formula, it's the main formula as a foundation is the same, but everything has a little difference. Like who you're trying to reach, what you're doing, you have to adjust that for your own personal unique situation. You can get a coach to help you, but in the end, only you can figure it out. You can read all the books, but it's really up to you to make those decisions. So, but I think there is a working formula. You just have to go big. It's like go big or go home. Be willing to try 1,000 different things. Don't just try 20 and then say, "Ah, that's it. It didn't work. I give up."
I think it's storytelling and branding. Like a lot of times, like I've tried to tell a story. I've tried to frame a concept with the podcast. The whole idea originally is that it's expansive. Because my brand of music is called expansive sound. So what did that mean? It meant that I can do multiple genres, from jazz to punk to rock to, you know, all multiple forms, EDM. So I'm not stuck on one form. So then when I started the podcast, I said, well, no, I'm going to interview people, initially musicians. I'm not just going to interview EDM. I'm going to interview all genres. So it's expansive. So I continued the idea of expansive. Then I opened it up to poets, writers, authors, film directors, actors. They're all in the creative space. And then I made a big leap, 2 years ago and said, I'm going to talk to entrepreneurs. I'm going to talk to CEOs. I'm going to talk to, life coaches. Like, well, how can you do that? You're talking to musicians. Say, well, the thread is creativity. If you're a life coach, you have an idea that's creative, just like an author, just like a writer, just like a poet, just like a musician. The single common thread is the creativity. So I took the idea of expansive sound and expanded it beyond music into podcasting, into life coaching, into just a conversation with another human being, knowing that human beings are creative, knowing that everybody wants to be successful and be able to put out their own individuality as their own brand. And that was the way I tried to spin it. And it's become, something that's been working. I've been able to increase my reach on multiple platforms, and it's actually, my numbers are coming back pretty good with my metrics. And it was just this thought, and I didn't do a lot of scientific analysis. I felt good about that idea, and if I feel good about it and I present it, will other people feel it? And it seems like they do. So that's the way I went about it, and that maybe that's not how everybody does it, but that's my own approach.
But I think one of the keys to your success is the fact that you initially did have a niche. Like, you did have, like, this target audience that you were trying to speak to, and then you made podcast episodes targeted for that kind of group. Because if you tried to just start having all these random people that you've had over the years, but not in the right order that you've had them now, then maybe you wouldn't be as successful, because if you had entrepreneurs in the beginning, it'd be like, "What are you trying to do? I don't understand." And people
Yeah.
would walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a progression. It's like sometimes, I think some people might, starting off expansive is probably not the best thing. If you start with a narrow focus, you get good at it. You get your legs, like your sea legs, they say. You actually got to get your feet wet and get into it, and that means you got to do it. Which means, like you said before, like even if you don't feel 100%, once you start an endeavor, like if you started a pizza shop, you got to keep that pizza shop open.
Yes.
Even if you don't feel good, you got to keep it open. It's the same idea when you're doing something like this. It's just like a brick and mortar shop. If you gotta show up for your pizza shop or you show up for your cookie shop or your baked goods shop, you gotta have the door open. It's the same idea, right? You get the door is open because it means you gotta show up.
Yeah, and if you don't show up, everyone's missing out on you. I think everyone has something to share, their own unique gifts and talents. In this case, creative professionals, whether it's acting, music, anything, writing. If people want what you have to offer, but if you don't show up, they can't buy from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think, like, you've got a really great outlook. Like, you at the beginning, like, you were able to get into a career where you didn't necessarily, have what people thought you should have, right? But you were able to get in the door. And I think
That's
a
right.
lot of people would be surprised because they look at the description of what the job is or what the opportunity is, and then say, "Well, I don't have A, B, C. I have like D, E, F, G." Say, "Why if I don't have those other things, I shouldn't even try."
That
And I think
that's
we're here
true.
today to say that you should not approach it that way. You should find something in your life, like you found that you had your book, you had these other things. You present these other things and show a holistic picture of yourself, and it's the elevator picture you're making. Like if you were in the elevator with the executive, what would you say about your life and a bunch of intelligent bullet points that you would kind of tell him what you are about? If you present that, you'll be surprised that people's like, "Wow, that's a compelling story. You told a story, and I wanna talk to you more. Maybe
Yeah.
I need somebody like this on my team
What
that can do
employers
that can
want, what
communicate."
anyone wants,
And a lot
what
of people
clients
find is, like,
want,
if
they
you can
want
communicate.
interesting. Yeah. Like, if you can come across as a really interesting person, they wanna take a look more. That's really what it is. Anything online, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, any of your social media, maybe you're not selling directly, but it is just to get someone's initial interest, to get them to stay tuned and listen for more. I think that's really what it is. Um, y Maybe the thing is, what I've come to realize is people don't give you opportunity right away. Sometimes it takes repeated exposure to you for them to get comfortable with you and what you're talking about, what you're offering before they want to reach out to you. So maybe their first initial contact with you is a random video they found on TikTok. Maybe then they saw a podcast, listen to a podcast. Then they saw like a full length YouTube video that you were in. And then maybe you got on their newsletter and then they read something that you wrote in the email newsletter. Maybe, a whole different variety of exposures to you before they actually end up going, "Ah, yes, I want to give you the opportunity."
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, if you can be out there in many different, platforms, like, if you can reach people from showing the different facets of what you're capable of, like, you got a YouTube channel, you got a blogger page, you got a website, you got a TikTok, you got a reel. If you hit all those areas, you got a WordPress, whatever, if you hit all, you'd be surprised. And I look at the metrics coming from different parts of the world, like, where I reach, and they get places I wouldn't have expected. Like, they're all over the planet. Like, different areas resonate with some of the stuff I'm doing, depending on what it's my music or my podcast or something. But I get different reactions, and then it's like, oh, well, I can focus on this area. I can focus on sending something out to the Netherlands or the Iceland or to, Argentina, or to, because I got fans here that like what I'm doing. So maybe I'll send them something special. Say, you guys are going to get this because you guys are fans and they're really engaging. So I'll send you guys something the other guys don't get. And then you get them even more involved. So you start to see, like, fans. You start to build, like, the true fans. You build a newsletter. You build a email list. You build that fan base, the fan group, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes you don't need a lot. You could have 30,000, 5,000, 1,000. If they're dedicated and they're always showing up, you'd be surprised how powerful that can be. If you get people that continually keep on showing up and being interested and writing about you and playlisting you and doing whatever, or promoting, saying that they like what you do, that's very powerful.
I agree. But, I think circling back to something we talked about earlier, because now we're talking about, like, the different platforms you should be on. I think now if we start saying, "Oh, you should be on TikTok and get a podcast and have a YouTube channel and have a blog and have an email newsletter and have a Twitter and an Instagram," it's like, "Oh my gosh, I need to be on 7 to 10 different platforms," which is insane, right? It's a lot of time. If you did all of that, it'd be a full-time job in itself. Maybe you even need to have a team to help you. So, I think what people should do is they should focus on one first, really commit to building that out. So whether it's a podcast or a YouTube channel, and then branching out, expanding from there, right?
Yeah, I just have some tools that are like automation tools that push on multiple platforms. And like, kind of, we're living in this AI age, so there's some new tools where, if you're creators, you can push things out automatically to multiple platforms. So it's not like you have to be as engaged as you might think you have to be when you have some of these automations that automatically put things on these platforms. But that's just a different thing. Like, yeah, initially when you're out there, initially you're focused on a narrow focus. But as you've been out for a while, you start taking advantage of some of the new technologies like AI and automations and automated workflows and things that just push out to multiple places at once. And then you're like, wow. I didn't have to actually do that, but it's doing it for me. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of opportunities where you can look into the tech that exists today and what it is today and what it is 6 months from now is like crazy exponential things happen. But our market goes by faster than I think. And again, we want to mention your Annie Fang Yang Financial.com. That'll be fully clickable when we're published. And we do encourage people to click on the URL where you find it. And again, we're on all the major podcast platforms that you can listen to or watch, and that will be fully clickable. We do encourage you, everyone who watched this episode, to click on that to get further information. Maybe you can tell them again what they find if they go to that website.
If you go on AnnieYangFinancial.com, you will find a button to be able to buy a signed paperback copy of the book. If you use the coupon code GHOST10, GHOST10, you can get a 10% off discount on the signed paperback copy. Along with, if you live in the United States, it comes with free domestic shipping.
Oh, awesome. That's cool. Thank you again for being on the show. We appreciate it. And we thank you for being a guest on the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. Have a great night.
Thank you, Phantom. Have a great night.